While we're here also, let's look at and talk about the 4-post frame. This mill has 4 posts, we call it. Anyway, we have stability on the right hand side and left hand side on both sides. We pull this head back and forth with dual 60 roller chains. I say dual, one on the left and one on the right. And so when this head goes forward, it's equally pulling. The bandsaw blade needs a constant feed speed. It don't need surges, and it don't need one side going faster than the other. I want to demonstrate what a head does when you're pulling it from one side or cantilevering a head that's hanging out here. You're pulling from one side, and what happens is this side goes forward, this side springs back a little bit, and then it catches up. And so you have this seesawing action going on. Although sometimes you can't see it with a visible eye, it is happening. So this side goes forward, this side is springing back and forth. The other thing the cantilever does is it bounces up and down. You can see this when the motor gets engaged. It'll bounce up and down. Well, the blade's bouncing up and down. That's not good for the blade. When that blade enters the cut, it don't need to be bouncing up and down. With this mill, when that blade goes in the cut, there is no bouncing up and down. When we set it, it sets and it's stable. We're stable from both sides. We're pulling from both sides. And when you have a mill that is stable, the head that's stable, you can saw faster than you can with something that's over here bouncing up and down and going back and forth. It's just not good for the blade. And remember, if our blade is cutting for us, we're happy campers. If this blade's not cutting, we're unhappy people. And that's just the fact of the matter. By the way, here is I didn't realize they had put this on for me because it's magnetized. You can just put it on the side. Here is the scale for the cross ties. If you want a 6-inch side, then you start here, and you can start on any number, and as long as you count down, you'll end up at 6 inches. For instance, if you want 9 inches, I know most of the large ties are 7 by 9, then if you start on any one of these numbers, if you start on the number 4 here, then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 cuts, and you'll be at 9 inches. So same thing with 8, same thing with 7, same thing with 6. And so that makes easy sight sawing if you want to just saw by sight. One thing that I hadn't shown you is the drag back fingers, the inside of here. The drag back fingers make sawing a pleasure, because when you saw through the slab and you pick it up and you come back, the slab comes right back out the back end. And when you saw the last board that you're going to saw on that face of the log, and you want to turn the log, when you drag back, you're clear, you turn, you start sawing, and then if you're working by yourself or having your helpers, then you worry about the slab after you start the head back sawing. And as you'll notice with this mill, we don't ride it, we don't walk with it, it goes down, we bring it back, everything is controlled from the back end of the mill. Occasionally you have to walk up and do something to the log, but on the most part, you can stand back on this area and saw and never have to handle the logs or worry about what's going on the front end. All you're worried about is lumber coming out the back side. One other thing that assists us with some of the heavier pieces of lumber, this is a standard item on the AC-36s. We have a heavy built roller back here, and when the cross tie or something heavy hits that, then it'll just scoot on back and go on back to your handling system that you might have back on the back. I think I've about covered from this end. In this part of the video, I'm going to show you the log loader, show you the axles, and tell you some about the AC-36. The log loader is made out of 2 half-inch plates on each side, and they're tied together. And we've got cylinders with a capacity of loading a 8,500 pound log. So this thing will pick the log up and load it with ease, and that makes, you know, loading the biggest log that you want to load fine. We use a good solid steel fender on this thing just so it's rigid. A log can bang on it and it don't hurt anything. We've got 2 6,500 pound axles. Both axles have electric brakes on them. We'll stack the edger on top of the mill over toward the front side. We take a 3/4 ton. We particularly have a Ford truck, a Chevy truck, it won't matter, but you get a Dodge, whatever, you get a 3/4 ton truck, you can stack the edger on top of this thing and you can just take off down the road. These axles can take care of the weight. the brakes will stop you. You actually have to cut back on the brakes just a little bit on the electric amount, just so that you don't drag the tire sometimes. So the brakes really give you an assist in traveling. Both of these axles swivel. It's really it's not a bad haul to haul this thing at all. You can, I've looked down and been traveling more than the speed limit a lot of times and have to slow down, but you can, with a truck that's got the power to pull it, you can hang right with the traffic when you travel. Next I'll show you, I'll just go to the log tapers. We have a roller on top. These tapers will go up so you can taper one end or the other. They're just outside of this, so they can taper a 20-foot log. It's no problem. Whatever size you got, you can get your taper worked in. Of course, the idea of the taper, for those of you who might not know, is that you want the center of the log centered parallel with the bed, and that's what you want to do with the taper. So if you got a log that's 20 inches on this end, and I'm just going to use a number that's easy to figure, and 10 inches on this end, then I want to pick this end up 5 inches is what I want to do. And that way I got the center of my log centered with the bed, and that gives you your best lumber right out of the center of the log. Next we got the squaring arms. You'll see these function. They go up and they go down. They're adjustable over here so they can be squared with this bed. And that's an easy thing to do. And you square all of your logs up. The logs clamp. This head will go up and down. You can go up to 12 inches, stop anywhere in between, down to 1 inch. You can saw a 1 inch board on the bed. We have hydraulic cylinders that move this over, so we have a good strong clamp. It is a scissor action, so it won't split the log. It's not powerful enough to split the log, but it's powerful enough to clamp it. While we're talking about clamping, we have what we call a bird beak. We've got a point here, and it spikes into the edge of the log and it holds it down. While you're sawing the log, they want to bow up in the center with stress because of the way the tree grows, and you're cutting more off of one side than the other side. But when our hydraulic cylinder clamps, we have two of the clamps come across, it spikes it at every one of these bunks, and it will hold that timber down. You can saw accurate lumber from the top to the bottom on the species of woods that you do saw that away. And I realize with oaks, sometimes you cut a few boards from one side, turn it to get the grade off of it. For those of you that don't know, your grade comes from the outside side of the log. After the tree gets 6 or 8 inches in diameter, that's when it really starts putting on the grade lumber. But down in that last 6 inches, you've got a lot of pin knots, you got a lot of small limbs that died off and broke off as that tree grew bigger and bigger, so it's a low grade if we're talking about oak and grade lumber. If you're talking about pine and structural things, you've got good lumber all the way through the center. Next we'll come to the, the log turner. We use a 120 roller chain. We use the spikes that are welded to it to turn the log. We have our hydraulics motor, you can't see that here, but mounted down underneath with the ratio that gives this chain a lot of power, and so we can turn those big logs. It'll turn a 36-inch log. We build it out of 1/2-inch plate here. We got 1.5 inch shafts here, got 1.5 inch shafts down here. We do not use pillow block bearings on a log turner. You may see a lot of people using pillow block bearings. You take a big log that weighs 8,000 pounds, you get it just right, and you'll bust 4 pillow block bearings just like that. Now you're spending a half a day taking this thing apart to put it back together just to change 4 bearings. Now, what we do have is solid block of steel with brass bushings in there. They're greasable. We grease these things every day, and if you miss the day, it's no big deal. But with its solid block steel, I've never had one to bust. The shafts are big enough to take the pressure. You won't break them. They'll give you years of good service. So we try to build things like this. This is a tool that takes a lot of hammering, and it takes a lot of pressure. And so through the years, we've improved it and improved it. We've got a very stout turner that'll turn the log. For those of you who like to saw longer things, I like to see 2 of these turners in there. They work together beautifully. And one of our video clips that you'll see somewhere later in this video or DVD, you will see 2 turners working, and it'll take a 20-foot log and just pick it up and just spin it like a top. It really works good for sawing those longer timbers if you got a lot of them to saw.